Practical Anarchy, A Guide to Self-Determination, Dickie Dredd. Section 93, Obstacles and Doubts, and How to Meet Them. Any vision of a free society must grapple with the doubts that immediately arise. These doubts are not minor. They are everyday objections heard in pubs, classrooms, media debates and private conversations. They carry weight precisely because they feel intuitive, that human nature is selfish and violent, that societies beyond the state cannot scale, that sabotage and collapse are inevitable, that the system is simply too entrenched to overcome without some kind of catastrophic reset. To ignore these counter arguments will be to build castles in the air. Human nature, myth and malleability. The most common refrain is that anarchism sounds fine on paper, but fails because people are just selfish. Yet, earlier sections already dismantled this myth by showing that behaviour is shaped less by fixed nature than by environment, education, inequality and propaganda. Anthropological evidence from cooperative hunter-gatherer societies, as well as modern experiments in mutual aid, indicate that collaboration is just as deeply human as competition. Crime itself, as argued earlier, is largely a product of poverty, alienation and unmet needs, not innate malice. Babies are not born greedy or violent. They become so in systems that reward exploitation and punish solidarity. Scale. From small groups to federations. Another doubt is whether anarchist principles can scale beyond communes or temporary projects. Critics claim that while a co-op or squat may thrive, running a nation would collapse into chaos. Earlier sections already showed how federations can bridge this gap, linking local assemblies into wider networks without central command. Historical precedents such as the Spanish collectives, contemporary cases like Rojava and Zapatista municipalities suggest that scale is not the enemy of autonomy, provided decisions remain rooted in recallable, localised delegates. Scale is managed by not by bureaucracy, but by federation, redundancy and decentralisation. Violence, sabotage and repression. A third doubt is that any attempt to live differently will be crushed by violence, whether from state corporations or internal sabotage. Earlier sections documented how countercultural movements, from the festivals to Occupy Wall Street, were repressed. Other sections showed how resilience depends on federations, redundancy, and the ability to regenerate after setbacks. Violence and sabotage are not reasons to abandon anarchism. They are reasons to deepen everyday anarchism, embedding practices of cooperation so widely that repression cannot wipe them out. Just as fungi spread underground before fruiting above the soil, everyday networks of solidarity make uprisings less vulnerable. Too hard, too late. Perhaps the deepest doubt is that it is already too late, that capitalist civilization is so entrenched it can only be ended by collapse and total rebirth. This apocalyptic narrative is seductive, echoed in climate doomism and prepper fantasies, yet it risks paralysing action. Earlier sections on resource councils and on federations argued the opposite. Transformation can begin piecemeal, through experiments that prefigure the future. Degrowth and transition initiatives, rewilding, mutual aid networks and commons already show what is possible in the cracks of capitalism. Collapse may accelerate change, but waiting for it seeds the field to reactionaries. The alternative is slowness, persistence and redundancy, the patient building of systems that can endure shocks without requiring total breakdown. Meeting the doubts. The pattern across these doubts is that each contains a grain of truth. People can be selfish, scale is difficult, repression is real, systems are entrenched. But the lessons of earlier sections are that resilience lies in recognising these obstacles and designing around them. Federation, patience, redundancy and everyday anarchism provide tools to meet these doubts. The simple but deeply ingrained belief that it cannot be done is itself one of the greatest obstacles. It is a belief drilled in by centuries of state and religious propaganda. reinforced by schooling, media, and the daily grind of wage slavery. To reject it is not naive, it is realistic. For if history shows anything, it is that systems once thought eternal, slavery, monarchies, empires, fall when people refuse to believe in them. Global food systems towards sustainability and choice. Any critical discussion of abundance must take food seriously. Today's global food system is both astonishing and disastrous, capable of producing more calories than the world's population needs, yet still leaving hundreds of millions hungry, while contributing almost a third of greenhouse gas emissions. Industrial meat production in particular drives deforestation, water stress and methane pollution on a scale that dwarfs many other sectors. At the same time, monocultures of soy, wheat and palm oil feed global supply chains but strip ecosystems of resilience. Earlier sections already showed how food sovereignty is key to autonomy and demonstrated the failures of market logic in securing survival. Food is a perfect example. Abundance exists, but distribution is governed by profit rather than need. There are, however, clear ways forward. Research consistently shows that reducing meat and dairy consumption lowers environmental impact. A large-scale study of 40,000 farms worldwide found that even the least damaging forms of meat and dairy use far more land and water and emit far more greenhouse gases than the worst plant-based foods. Shifting towards vegetarian and vegan diets could free up vast tracts of land for rewilding, reduce deforestation, cut emissions and improve health outcomes. This does not mean forcing people into uniform diets. A militant veganism would simply reproduce the coercion we are trying to dismantle, and I did an earlier section on this in the mini-series. Instead, the point is that a money-free, resource-based society would naturally encourage diets that are lighter on the planet because ecological costs would be visible and shared. People would still have choice, but the incentives for destructive practices would vanish. Case studies already exist. Cuba's urban agriculture during the special period produced food locally with minimal external inputs. Kerala's centralised food systems show how community-led schemes can improve nutrition while resisting corporate control. Community gardens, permaculture networks, and local food cooperatives across the world demonstrate that food can be grown, shared and enjoyed outside industrial agriculture. The benefits are obvious. With less land devoted to intensive animal farming, huge areas would be returned to forests, wetlands and wild spaces, strengthening climate resilience and biodiversity. With more emphasis on pulses, grains, vegetables and fruit, global health would improve. With shorter supply chains, dependency on volatile global markets would fade. In short, rethinking food is central to rethinking abundance. There is also promising research into 3D printed meat, which would mean fewer animals killed, less land used, lower emissions. In practice, it reveals the same contradictions that haunt every green technology. Researchers now using bioprinting to layer muscle cells, fat and connective tissue into edible forms that mimic meat, steak or chicken. Companies such as Redefine Meat and Aleph Farms claim to offer cruelty-free alternatives, while university labs refine the process of printing cells on plant-based scaffolds. Anarchists might see this as both hopeful and troubling. On one hand, the ability to grow meat without animals could break a major link between appetite and exploitation. On the other, control over the technology remains concentrated in patents, startups and venture capital. Instead of decentralised production, we risk a new form of agrarian monopoly, protein as intellectual property. As with renewable energy or genetic engineering, the question is not only whether the science works, but who owns it. Now, coming next, I'm going to put together my ideas for systematic roadmaps of how we do a nationwide move towards an anarchist society, and then I'll even have a pop at a global roadmap. Now, of course, these are just my ideas based on research and just thinking about it over years and years and years, but uh, they're there to be debated, discussed, and just to put something on the table. And of course, if you can, like, subscribe, comment, it really does help. It doesn't necessarily help me, but it helps get the message out there to people. Okay, thanks.